The American College of Radiology,
Focused, forward.
together.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Parenting in Radiology. I'm Aluchi, a medical student and future radiologist, and this series is all about learning from those who have navigated both medicine and parenthood with wisdom and grace. Today's episode is all about managing parental leave during training, a topic that comes up a lot, especially among students and residents wondering how it's even possible to balance family planning and the demands of medical training. We are joined by some incredible physicians who have lived it, Dr. Regina Hooley, Dr. Liva Andreeva, and Dr. Mark Johnson. So let's bring everyone on screen and jump right in. So to start off, could each of you just briefly introduce yourselves and just share a little bit about your journey to medicine and to radiology, and let us know when during your training you had your children. Dr. Hooley, can you get started?
Of course. Hi, thank you for inviting me here to this interesting and important conversation. My name is Regina Hooley. I'm a breast imager and I'm Executive Vice Chair for Clinical Affairs at Yale Radiology and Biomedical Imaging. I am going to be providing the historical perspective. My kids are in their 20s. Going back, I am the first and only physician in my family. And I had my first baby just a few months after completing my fellowship during my first attending job. I have 4 kids, and my second and third were at different jobs because I was transitioning during that time and figuring things out. And then my fourth was also at Yale. So I kind of went through it with different employers back in the day. So it's been a great journey of parenthood that continues, and I don't think it ever stops. And that's where I come from. I went into radiology because when I didn't know what to do in medical school, and I looked at the radiologists, and they always seemed happy. You know, when I looked at my attendings that I was during the various rotations in my third and fourth year, and it seemed like a challenge. I always like a challenge, and sort of mysterious. And I've never looked back. I love it, and it has been challenging, and there's still some mystery involved as well.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Hooley. Dr. Johnson, can you go next? Can you share a little bit about your journey?
Right. Thanks for having me. It's great to be a part of this conversation, especially given the male perspective here. Anyway, I kind of really enjoyed medical imaging once I started medical school, and kind of never really looked back. And so I'm at Dartmouth now, and I am a breast and body imager. And I'm in my first year post-training. So my wife, she works full time at an in-person job, and we have 2 kids, 2.5 years old and 10 weeks old. And happy to talk more about this process. But what really drew me into radiology was kind of similar, the inquiry and challenge that it presents. And continue to love it.
Thanks for sharing. Dr. Andreeva, would love to hear your story too.
Yes, so I, similarly to Dr. Hooley and Dr. Johnson, and yes, thank you so much for having me. I just loved radiology during my last year of medical school. During my rotation, I realized that that's what I wanted to do. And then subsequently during residency training, I fell in love with breast imaging and also emergency radiology. I did that for a long time. So, and I actually only have one child. He's now 10, and I had him when I was basically 9 years into my employment at Yale. I was at the time assistant professor, so kind of late, early, mid-career, like late, early career, I would say. And so that's a little bit different than, Dr. Johnson and Dr. Hooley. So I can talk about that a bit more as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's always powerful to hear the different paths that brought us here. Now let's dive into the heart of the conversation. What did your parental leave planning and experience look like during training or even early on in your career? Dr. Andrejeva, can you get us started?
Certainly. At the time when I had my son, the Connecticut Parental Leave Act had not yet begun. The standard leave at the time was basically 6 weeks. I think if you had a vaginal delivery versus 8 weeks for the cesarean, and and I believe that so FMLA, of course, was available if you needed for some difficulties. So what I did was I, of course, did let my administrators and my section head know when I was probably 3 months or so along, when it was kind of sort of safe, if you will, to tell people that was the case so that they could plan. I did bank basically all of my vacation because I wanted to have as much time as possible. And and my colleagues were very supportive of that. And so I did have a longer leave, if you will, because of I banked my vacation. So I took all of my vacation plus 6 weeks, plus my son was born with a birth defect that was thankfully correctable. It was extremely stressful. Of course, for everyone. And I also took about a month and a half of FMLA because of that. And again, my colleagues were wonderfully supportive, as was the administration. And after that, I actually was able to work about like a 2/3 day at one of our satellites. We were kind of winding down the location because it was going to be absorbed into another facility. And so I was able to work like 2/3 day, so then I could get home a bit earlier. And I did that for about a month and a half. And again, I'm extremely grateful for that. It really made a huge difference. So I think the point is that, if you need something, people understand, and it just be open, discuss, find someone that you feel comfortable with talking about this, and people in general are very supportive.
Thank you, Dr. Andrejeva.
Thank you.
Dr. Hooley, what was that time like for you?
Well, it was interesting for me, especially for my oldest, who was born in 1996. So he is a young adult. I still consider him a young adult. So, the leave at the time was similar to what Dr. Andrejeva stated. It was 6 weeks for a vaginal and 8 weeks for a C-section. But the interesting thing was, a few days before my oldest son was born, the FMLA came into play. It was established then. It was one of President Bill Clinton's first initiatives, and it went into effect a few days before he was born. So I took it, and I can tell you that my employers at the time were pretty unhappy with me because they were shocked. And then all the stories came out and there were actually a fair number of women in my department at the time. And it came out like all the stories about how they got 2 weeks or they didn't get any time and they had to use their vacation. They might have been they were probably like 10 years older than me. And there was, I felt a little resentment, but I thought that 6 weeks really wasn't enough. I went straight from, I never took a break, college, medical school, residency, fellowship, right into my attending job, like maybe like 2 weeks, maybe a week break in between that. And I just needed some time to reset and decompress. My husband had a busy job and commuting, and I took it, and they were unhappy. And I didn't last long at that job after I came back 3 months later, just because I just didn't feel the support there. And then my other kids were born at with other employers. And the interesting thing was when I was a free agent after my first the office across the street called me up, and because they knew I was free, and they said, "Well, will you work for us? Or our radiologist is going on we called it maternity leave at the time, maternity leave." And I was like, "Well, I kind of wanted to move out of the area, but I said, I'll stay and I'll help out. I want to help out another woman." And I ended up staying there for 3 years, and we're great family friends. We just did a little vacation together a few weeks ago, and our kids know each other. And so I think it's good to be really supportive, and there's lots of benefits all around. And then, of course, for my last kids, when I was at Yale, they were supportive, and I took the 12 weeks easily, 6 weeks paid, 6 weeks unpaid. I believe now at Yale, it's 12 weeks paid for faculty, 12 weeks paid for faculty, and the same for new fathers and mothers. So it's equal. So it's nice, and there's benefits to that, long-term benefits, not just for the family, but also just, I think, changing the culture and expectations all around. I'm not sure what it is for residency. For residents, maybe Mark, know more, and Leva, more, exactly what the residents get. But I don't think that it impacts their the length of their training for the most part, which is what the residents in my generation experience. They'd have to extend and had issues with fellowship balancing and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Dr. Johnson, how did that look in your case?
Yeah, so boy, going back to the planning phase, yeah, we had our first child in just before my last year of residency, and basically, once we even thought of the idea of having kids, we, in today's environment, we immediately put our names on a lot of daycare lists, because daycare is hard to come by in a lot of parts of the country. So we were on the wait list for 2 years, actually, before our first son was born. Similar to what the other people have said, when did we tell our department? And again, my wife is not in medicine. She works a full-time job in person. And we waited until the 20-week scan. It just felt like the right thing for us. And then, the planning for what I was able to do. So during my training, the ACGME came out and said that you can now take 6 weeks of leave at one point during your training, and it can be used for paternity leave. And I knew I wanted to use it at this point. I was getting towards the end of my training. But we also felt like it wasn't quite long enough for what we wanted. So I did pursue and get some FMLA time on top of that. Because I didn't see this being done by my other colleagues, this additional FMLA time, I wanted to make sure that it didn't extend my training, and as what was said earlier, being open and honest about asking these questions, both of with your colleagues, with your program director, with your GME office, to make sure everything is aligning appropriately. And of course, thinking about your call schedules to make sure that you take your fair share of call, and don't have to leave some of that to your colleagues as best you can. So working as a team player in this process is really important. But yeah, in total, I was able to do my 6 weeks of GME paid leave, followed by a total of 4 weeks of unpaid FMLA. And I broke that down to 2 weeks kind of continuous, followed by 1 day a week for 10 weeks following. And my program was very supportive, which I feel very fortunate for. And it kind of, allowed me to really be there for those first few months with my wife and child. So I highly recommend it if it is feasible for folks.
That's amazing. Now, every journey has its own unique hurdles. So, what were some of the challenges you faced, whether logistical, emotional, or professional, during this parental leave planning process? We can start with Dr. Johnson, since you just spoke.
Sure. Thanks. So, yeah, I mean, as I kind of mentioned, it did feel a little weird to ask for additional leave. It wasn't something that my colleagues, fellow residents were doing at the time. Um, that said, I was met with full support by my program, which was really wonderful. I will say though that several of my colleagues, not only in my year but in adjacent years, were going through the process of starting a family. So I was watching how they were going through it as well. Um, so that was of benefit. But yeah, it did feel, a little weird to think about taking this extra time. But in retrospect, I was really glad I did. Um, so that was, I guess, one of the challenges just mentally that I had to think about. Um, the logistical challenges I kind of mentioned already. Just make sure you're planning ahead of time and openly communicating with your program, your department, and your colleagues to try and just make sure everything aligns as best they can for adequate coverage. And it gets different once you're out in the real world. We have our second child now, and he's 10 weeks old. And yes, and this is during my first year as an attending. And, in some ways, it gets harder to make sure that you have coverage once you're out and as a staff versus when you're in a resident role. And so it's just something I've learned through this process. Um, Hopefully I did okay in answering your questions. Any follow-up to that or?
No, I think that's great. Thanks for being so honest about your journey, Dr.
Yeah.
Johnson. Dr. Andrejeva, how about you?
In general, I feel, I work at a rather large academic center. So, we have I have many colleagues, both in breast imaging and at the time it was in ER radiology as well. So mostly coverage was not as much of an issue. At least, I wasn't made felt, no one made me feel like it was going to be, maybe it was an issue, but I really I felt very comfortable and supported. I guess the only little thing that happened when I spoke to kind of our chief administrator, not a radiologist, she's in the department. She did say this is before she had any children, so I think now she understands very well. But she said, "Oh, I think it's excessive for you to take your vacation and combine it with your maternity leave." So, and again, I understand because she, that was kind of the only thing that was a little bit negative, I think. But I think she understands now, and that's okay. Things like this happen, and I think again, times have changed, things have improved. I think people are a lot more supported. Again, it may be different in smaller practices. But again, there's much more flexibility when you're at a larger academic center. And afterward, when I did come back, yes, it was difficult because of sleep deprivation. I also felt like, it's a little bit older than maybe the average person having kids at the time. I was 41. So, I definitely had maybe more, I don't know, maybe more difficulty dealing with sleep deprivation, but I feel like, I got work done. You're at that point, I was comfortable I was, 9 years in, so I was pretty comfortable working in breast imaging. You're kind of a little bit on autopilot and you can get through but I was very, very grateful that I was able to work those 2/3 days and, get home a little bit sooner because I was still dealing with the kind of the aftermath of the trauma of my son having had major surgery. And yes, I felt mostly very, very supported.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing. Dr. Hooley, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Sure. I think one thing that most people have to overcome when they are planning the parental leave and new parents is fear. There's a lot of fear, whether it's how you're going to tell your employer and your colleagues, and you think it's going to affect their vacation and their time away, and their work schedules, to having this, creating a family, whether it's your first or expanding your family. And, the physical changes that the mothers are going through for the most part. And then, you always worry about your newborn, like, whatever is going on with them. Are they hitting their milestones, or did they, my nephew has a big birthmark that on his face that he's had some other things going on. Luckily, he's doing well, but now they're doing laser and all this stuff, and he's 4 months old. So I think you have to overcome the fear, and I would say my advice is that first of all, you're not alone, and you need to communicate with your colleagues and your program director or your chief, and keep those lines of communication open. And I think these days people are much more understanding, and they're much more understanding if you communicate. Like if things change, if your leave changes or something's happening, I wouldn't be shy about it. Like we all go through stuff. Life is hard, right? Being an adult is hard. And you need the support. And by communicating, you can offer support to somebody else, and they can offer support to you. So, communicate. And then the other thing, as physicians, plan, right? It's never too early to start planning. Childcare, backup. Like that's the most stressful thing I think in my career was having managing work and then also having to have childcare. And particularly, I think it's a little bit different now, like when you're in a, when before in the old days when you were a resident, like you couldn't miss a day. Like it was a big deal if you missed a day on service. But now I think when the attendings miss a day, it's a big deal. And especially in breast imaging, because we're patient facing and we have less work from home opportunities. So, all of that like backup, layers of backup. I mean, let me tell you, when you have 4 sons, it's hard to get childcare and hard to get backup. When I'm like, you got 4 kids and they're all boys, like which they were when they were little. I mean, people would walk away. So I just had layers of formal and informal backup back in the day, and make sure that your partner is, if you're not a single parent, make sure that your partner is equally involved, and it's not just also not only in the like physical stuff that's involved, but also in the mental load, and start that early, which is why both mothers and fathers get parental leave these days, I think, so that there's that early sort of grounding.
Yeah, definitely. And you've already started talking about what I was going to talk about next, but just the fact that hindsight is always 2020. So looking back, what do you wish you would have known before stepping into this parental season and balancing that with your medical journey? Since Dr. Hooley has already began talking about that, we're going to start with you.
Okay. Well, I'll add to that, and I think um, what I wish I would have known is that it's not just about the early phases and the parental leave and figuring things out. Like once you become a parent, this is a lifelong thing. And there are challenges, and your kids need you at every age, and it evolves. And that plays into, work, whether or not, at some point you need to take the FMLA, which luckily more people, it's used more liberally now. And again, I think that's a very good thing to have that. Or whether when you are an attending, that you can pull back and maybe work part-time and take a day off for a little bit and have that flexibility and have those conversations with people, and then maybe go back. Like I worked part-time for a while, then I went full-time. And I went back to full-time. And so it's just remember that, it's a great ride, it's a great journey, but it just doesn't stop at parental leave. It continues. And I'm very lucky, I'm still involved in my kids' lives, and they reach out for help and advice, even though they're young adults living in different cities. But they call almost every day, either me or my husband or the family group chat. And, I still worry about them, and I also share the joys and their successes, but often there's something going on, and it just continues.
Most definitely. Dr. Johnson, how about you? What's something you wish you knew going in?
Great question. I think just going kind of similar to what Regina had to say. Just looking back, it's always difficult to know like when is exactly the right time maybe for a family to think about getting started. Um, I think if I were to just go back and tell myself like there's no perfect time, you know, there's always going to be, something that might be, like is this the right time for us, our family? But it's never going to be perfectly calm and perfectly the way you maybe ideally want it, and that's okay. And I think just knowing that is important. And I think the other thing, just what I wish I would have known. I'm glad I took the FMLA time I did. I think I am happy that that worked out for me, and very thankful to my program and my colleagues for helping it succeed. And I'm glad I was there for my partner too, just because yeah, it's a busy time at the beginning. Babies are waking up every 2 to 3 hours, and that doesn't stop. That's 20 every day. And being able to share that with your partner at the beginning is a very special time, and is something I'm thankful I was able to do. So I don't know, yeah, just being the change that you want to see in yourself, and in the world, and stand up for yourself and your family are just a couple of things I would just encourage trainees and people in practice to do. But obviously, as well said already, communicate. I think being a team player in this whole process with both your colleagues and in your family is just part of the process. I'll leave it at that, but thanks again.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Andre Hejeva, what about you?
I think it is important to realize, especially for us, we are used to be like super successful at everything. We've gone through college, we've gone through med school, we've gotten into a competitive residency fellowship, we have, good jobs. And so we're kind of used to being successful at everything. And when you have a child, frequently you may feel like things are a bit out of control. Like all of a sudden you're not being as successful as, you don't understand things and you're tired, and you can feel like a failure. And it can be, especially for us, it can feel even like more of a failure. And you look at other people's perfect pictures on Instagram and Facebook, and you see these perfect pictures and you somehow imagine that everyone else is doing better than you are with parenting, right? And I think it's important to realize that, that is okay. Like there will be times when you feel like this and you're not a failure. Like your child will be fine, as long as you follow a few basic rules and, keep them fed, keep them, if they cry uncontrollably, you call your pediatrician, you can put them in the crib, step away, have a glass of wine or what, or juice or whatnot, and it will be okay. Like you don't have to be perfect. And I think it can be hard for us. Like we can really be very hard on ourselves and criticize ourselves. And I felt almost responsible for this birth defect that my son had. And this is also important, find a colleague to talk to, or a friend who's, and you'll realize people start telling you stories about their problems. And in a way, it's good to commiserate. It's good to share, and you'll feel better. So.
Thank you so much. As we round off this episode, I just want to give you all an opportunity to just give one piece of advice to trainees or to departments who are planning for parental leave. What is one piece of advice that you would give? Let's start with Dr. Andreeva, and then we'll go backwards.
I think it's just good to be empathetic. If you've never had kids yet, just realize that it may be you one day. And it's just good to help each other out, create like a good kind of culture, open communication, be supportive. Like ultimately it benefits everybody. And I have to say that I was very lucky to have that. And I'll definitely, pay it forward and backward. And so.
Thank you. Dr. Johnson, what would you add?
think I'll just echo something I said earlier. Is just, be the change that you want to see and stand up for yourself and your family, even if you're a guy or the non-birthing partner. Um, and yeah, otherwise just work as was nicely said just a moment ago, work with your colleagues in your program and openly communicate about this whole process. It's really fun, and it's an adventure in itself. So
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Hooley, we will give you the last word on this one.
Oh, thank you. This is a great conversation. I would say that we need to respect the rights and needs of the trainees and junior faculty who are going through this process. I've seen it change a lot over, the years that I've been working over 2+ decades, and the culture is changing, and it still needs to change a little bit more. So it's, respect what they need, and let's see it, get to the right place where everybody doesn't have the fear and they feel supported, and it'll be better for everyone.
Most definitely. Thank you all so much for your honesty, your insight, and your encouragement. Conversations like this remind us that with the right support and with the right planning, it really is possible to grow both a family and a fulfilling career in radiology. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time on Parenting in Radiology.